This is gonna be a bit of a crazy spaces. There's gonna be a YouTube video as well. So the title of this is BTC Bitcoin will increase the death rate. Now that that's a crazy statement right there. So this video is gonna be about bank runs. Um, in American history, one of the worst events was the Great Depression. And the Great Depression was when people had pretty much all their money in a bank, and there was fear that, oh, the bank doesn't have my money in the bank. And what's really scary about this is that this is everybody's life savings. And this is essentially when a bank run happens, a long line forms in front of the bank. There's a queue, and your money isn't accessible when you want it or when you need it. So this is one of the worst moments in American history, economically, right? And that's something you never want to be a part of, is a bank run. And so when word got out that like banks didn't have any money, that fear and panic causes people to say, well, you know what? If that is true, I want to get my money out first. I want to be the first to get my money out um, before there's no money left, right? All right. What does this have to do with Bitcoin? Isn't Bitcoin this beautiful invention that, oh, we're free from the dollar. We don't need to trust banks. I personally, I left Bitcoin, or I left fiat because of actually a bank run, that whole concept, because of fractional reserve banking. Even though we have protections in place and they can print stuff into oblivion, I just said, this is a house of cards. I want nothing to do with fiat. I'm going to be buying Bitcoin. And this was a while back. So the whole purpose that I wanted Bitcoin was just, it's like part of American history. We know how dangerous bank runs are. Well, what's terrifying about Bitcoin is it's no different than the fiat system at all. I know it's crazy. A Bitcoin maxi is going to hear this and they're going to be like, what? What? Bitcoin's a revolution. No, right? All right, well, hear me out. Hear me out. A bank run is horrifying because you can't access your money when you want it or need it, and then by the time you do, it's gone. It's evaporated, right? Well, that can happen on Bitcoin easily, and it can happen tomorrow. And this isn't a hypothetical. These are facts, and these are data. This is real data you can look up. This is all verifiable, and I'm just going to be telling you facts about Bitcoin, and you can come to the conclusion you want. And this is why I'm out of Bitcoin. I don't own a single Bitcoin. I'm done with this garbage. I'm out. There are other ways to have sound money and have sovereignty outside of Bitcoin that has nothing to do with gold or fiat or stocks, right? There's other proof of works, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into it. But basically, here's what's terrifying is with Bitcoin, if a bank run were to happen on Bitcoin, this is what's terrifying. There's 200 million cold wallets active, or cold wallets in Bitcoin. 200 million people have Bitcoin in a cold wallet, right? And all these Michael Saylor maxis, all these Bitcoin influencers, they say, oh, Bitcoin's going to be the base layer where you save. Bitcoin's the base layer where you save. That's your gold. That's your store of value. And the Lightning Network is the medium of exchange. That's how you're going to send and receive this currency, right? But what they fail to realize is that the base layer can only, Bitcoin is only capable of doing 800,000 transactions a day. There's a cap, there's a limit. And so we're in this phase right now where Bitcoin is getting global adoption. We're getting banks in on Bitcoin. We're getting corporations in on Bitcoin, MicroStrategy's buying Bitcoin. We're getting the best Bitcoin adoption ever. And so Bitcoiners, this is the heyday for Bitcoin. This is awesome. We're getting everything that we want right now, right? But what's terrifying is that Bitcoin can only do 800,000 transactions a day. What does this mean? Well, if we really are on a Bitcoin standard and Bitcoin is up in price, there's going to be people who want to start using the Bitcoin. They're going to either do two things. They're going to open Lightning channels, or they're going to send the money to an exchange and use fiat. That's just fine. You want to buy a car, Bitcoin's up $300,000. It's time to buy a car, so you're going to spend some Bitcoin, right? Well, part of Bitcoin's global adoption, all these Bitcoin maximalists are making, they simultaneously are betting that what I'm about to say isn't going to happen. So here's what happens with Bitcoin. If every one of those cold wallets that owns Bitcoin decides they either want to open a Lightning channel or spend a little bit of their Bitcoin by converting it to Coinbase or whatever the hell, well, the base layer can only support 800,000 transactions a day, and there's 200 million holders. So let's do the math on this. Do you know what happens to the base layer? I don't know if you know this, but if there's 200 million people trying to queue a transaction in something that can only do 800,000 transactions a day, that means that you will be forced to wait up to about 120 days to be able to have your Bitcoin move from cold storage to either a Lightning channel or Coinbase or an exchange. 120 days. So if every Bitcoiner decides to use their Bitcoin, there's real risk of you having to wait 120 days. And that's not even including the fee required to jump ahead in line. So just imagine that. Just imagine when word gets out that if you have all your Bitcoin in cold storage, there is a moment where there's a chance. The chance is non-zero. There's a real chance that you could be forced to wait 120 days to access your money. Well, you know what's crazy? You know what happens to Bitcoin's price in 120 days? No one can predict it. Who knows what it's going to be? So, in fear, people are going to probably, if they have this knowledge, I know this is me myself. I saw this and I said, forget that. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm out. I need a network that can do 150 million transactions in a day, right? And so this is what a bank run on Bitcoin looks like. There's going to be people with transactions queued for 120 days because the base layer can only do 800,000. And it's only going to be the rich that will be able to pay enough for the transaction fees to sell all their Bitcoin. And simultaneously, you know what happens when people are either opening up Lightning channels to spend their Bitcoin or to put it on an exchange? They're selling. That's downward pressure. So there's going to be people who are forced to, if everybody uses the Bitcoin network right now, today, all Bitcoin holders in cold storage right now, the chance is non-zero that they're going to be forced to hold Bitcoin in cold storage for 120 days. They can't move it on the network while the price is simultaneously dropping. That is insane. So what I'm trying to articulate here is that a bank run on Bitcoin, not only is the chance non-zero, it's actually inevitable because most bank runs occur out of fear of a bank run. There are times where banks, they do the whole fractional reserve bullshit. They might still be able to get away with what they're doing, but it's the fear. If people are scared and they panic, that's what causes the bank to collapse, which is why we even have FDIC insurance. It's to remove that fear. Well, Bitcoin doesn't freaking have that. No one's going to help you on Bitcoin. You're on your own. So, basically what I'm trying to articulate here is if you have your entire net worth in Bitcoin, why is this titled BTC will increase the death rate? Well, think about this. Right now, there's a message going around. You need to get to zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. You need to get to 1 Bitcoin. You need to get to 100 million Satoshis, right? There's all these people putting their entire net worth into Bitcoin. I only invest in Bitcoin. I don't have any stocks. Bitcoin only. Bitcoin self-custody only. All right. Well, the chance for you trying to exit Bitcoin, um, and having it take 120 days to sell, and the price also simultaneously going down, is not zero. There's 200 million cold wallets that exist that hold Bitcoin, and Bitcoin can only do 800,000 transactions a day. So mathematically, if you're a Bitcoin bull and your entire net worth is in Bitcoin, you're banking on Bitcoin adoption while simultaneously making a bet that nobody's going to be using Bitcoin. It's a contradictory belief. How on earth can you believe that Bitcoin is going to take over the world and be this monetary layer while simultaneously also think that this situation is never going to happen? This is actually what's going to happen. This has to happen. And every new monetary system will be tested at some point. And when this happens on Bitcoin, it is not going to be pretty. And I think the amount of Bitcoin holders that have their life savings in Bitcoin, the the self deletion rate, the amount of people that unalive themselves when they panic and they go to sell, they want to sell their Bitcoin or spend it in some way, shape, or form, and their queued transaction is 120 days away, and they see the price falling, they're literally going to see their net worths melt before their eyes. It's going to be the big corporations that are able to sell for it first. It's going to be PvP versus BlackRock, PvP versus MicroStrategy. Um, and if you can't afford to do PvP with those big billionaire companies, you're going to be forced to get out of this freaking asset. It's going to take 120 days, and you're just literally going to see the price of Bitcoin tank. You're literally going to see your wealth just evaporate. So, um, yeah, that's my thesis here. And look what happened during the Great Depression. The Great Depression, two things happened. People were forced to wait to access their money, and then by the time they could access their money, it was gone. Bitcoin has the exact same setup right now because it can only do 800,000 transactions, and there's 200 million holders of cold storage Bitcoin. And if at any moment, any one of if a decent percentage of them decide I want to just sell or use this damn thing, it's a 120-day queue. This is literally the definition of a bank run. And what's going to happen is there's just going to be what's going to happen is only a few people are going to try to sell or use their Bitcoin because they're up in profit. I believe this is going to happen when Bitcoin's doing really well. People are going to have $300,000 gains, and they're going to be like, I want to buy a car. There's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of money that want to buy cars. And the demand, there are going to be people cashing out to Coinbase. There's going to be people cashing out on the Lightning Network. They're going to be buying cars, maybe a house, whatever. It's going to be a successful time in Bitcoin history in the next 4 or 5 years. Um, and what I see happening is at some point, 800,000 people are going to be making 800,000 transactions on Bitcoin. Okay, well, there's going to be other people that are in profit, but they're going to have their transaction queued one day. All right, the base layer is filled for a full day. All right, that's not bad. But then it's going to be 2 days, 3 days. And then when word gets around, oh, gee, Bitcoin's price right now is really high. And you know what? I really want that car. But right now it takes 3 days to sell my Bitcoin because everyone else is doing the same thing as me. You know what? I'm going to try to sell mine today and just collect the cash I can to buy that car. Oh, okay, well, now the queue is 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. And it's going to be an exponential um, jump. And before you know it, there's going to be so many people that have, $300,000 in Bitcoin. The queue is going to be 120 days, um, and they're literally going to see their life's work evaporate. So, and look what happened during the Great Depression. People did horrible things. People ended their lives, literally because of these exact circumstances. Um, and this is why I go after so many Bitcoin maximalists, is because they don't know the damage that they're doing. They're blind and they're freaking retarded. So, and they just don't know how Bitcoin works. They don't know that the rate of people entering Bitcoin right now is slower than the rate of people, I believe, in 4 years that are going to want to somehow leave/use the network. And when I say leave the network, I don't mean leave the network in a bad way. I don't think people are going to want to leave Bitcoin out of fear in the beginning. I think people are just going to want to spend their Bitcoin to buy a car, spend their Bitcoin to buy a phone, spend their Bitcoin to buy, they're going to be up 200% on their money. I think this is going to happen when Bitcoin's doing really well. I think Bitcoin's going to be high in price. People are going to be up on their money and they're just going to want to start buying stuff. And I believe that there's just going to be the same way that there's 200 million Bitcoin holders right now. I think there's going to be a larger number of holders that are in profit. And so I guess what I'm trying to articulate here is this horrible doomsday scenario makes perfect sense to the catalyst that can start this is when Bitcoin is doing phenomenal. So does that happen this year? I don't know, nor do I care. Does that happen next year? I don't know. There is a chance that this doesn't happen, and honestly, that would be awesome if this doesn't happen. Um, but how are you gonna, if you're gonna be a Bitcoin bull and you're gonna be banking on Bitcoin, you're banking that this is gonna be the settlement layer for the globe. If that's what you're banking on, then you're also simultaneously banking against what I'm saying, which mathematically, like it's contradictory. If you're banking for Bitcoin global adoption, you also simultaneously have to accept the understanding that a bank run on Bitcoin is inevitable because people will be trying to use it. So that's one of the reasons I'm completely out of Bitcoin. And what's so fascinating about Caspa is it's literally a store of value. And what's funny is a few months ago it did 150 million transactions in a day, and then it did it again the next like a week later. Um, and what's funny is that's like the total amount of Bitcoin wallets in existence. So theoretically, if you were to do the same thing, if there were to be a bank run on Bitcoin, it's cooked. But if there was a bank run on Caspa, it would be totally fine. No one would even notice. Everybody there would it would take 8 seconds to leave the network. There's no queue of 120 days. There's no so literally Caspa, you can't do a bank run on. Bitcoin, I mean, it's freaking terrifying. Literally every day that you own Bitcoin, you're banking that people, current holders, aren't going to want to spend it. And those are horrible odds. 200 million against 800,000. Those are the numbers. 800,000 transactions is all Bitcoin can do. 200 million is the number of Bitcoin holders. So at any moment, you're just betting that people aren't. Anyway, that's the idea. That's my video. That's the rant. Stay safe out there, and do your own research. Study Bitcoin. This is what happens when you study Bitcoin. If you actually study Bitcoin, you'll see this. You'll see this crap. So anyway, peace out, y'all.